Who will be the shocking first pick in tonight's Fantasy Pros Championship draft? Which teams will bubble to the surface as threats to win the $1 million grand prize? And what other surprises will be in store as we cover another Fantasy Pros Championship draft for you live tonight here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. My name is Eric Balkman. Ferrell Elliott is here. Stick around. Your High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour live coverage of the Fantasy Pros Championship draft starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than me, the lesser.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Welcome in, everybody. Welcome into the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour live coverage of the Fantasy Pros Championship. I'm Eric Balkman, your slightly above average host. Don't forget, if you want to draft in the Fantasy Pros Championship, you can do so right now at myffpc.com. Live and slow main events going on with the FFPC main event as well. Best ball draft, Superflex, best ball tournament, Superflex best ball tournament, also at myffpc.com, as well as Empire Dynasty Leagues, Dynasty Startup Leagues, all at myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. I'm a little out of breath, so I'm going to bring in my co-host with the most. He is Ferrell Elliott, the commissioner of KFFSC.com. Ferrell, welcome in.
Oh, and wow. We're going to do the full hour together, bro. What you're telling me now.
Yeah, exactly.
I was frivolously wasting time.
Were you really?
Yeah. Quiet Hollers are touring Europe.
Are they really? They've been over there for a while, right?
Yeah.
This is not their first time there, I should say.
Yeah, well, it helps to have a good agent in Europe.
That's true. I guess it does. It also helps to have some really good analysis on the Fantasy Pros Championship draft tonight, which is what you and I are going to be covering here live. We might get in some of the drafters popping in tonight. Remember, these 12 are all going to be battling for $1 million grand prize. If you want to join them, we have spots open in the midnight draft tonight. myffpc.com is where to go for that. I'll take you through the list of who we have here drafting tonight. Some former guests of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour as well. Leading things off tonight is the Spearmint Rhinos owner, Alex Balazzo, former guest of the show, former Pros versus Joe's member as well.
KFFSC player.
And KFFSC player as well. That's right. William Navon is the Bo Nose owner in spot number 2. Kyle Anand's aptly named Bad Stuff Happens in the Bathroom. Aptly is probably not the right modifier I want to use there, but he is drafting third tonight. Hitting cleanup is Michael Culhane's Hammer. Now that's an appropriate name for drafting in the 4th spot tonight. John Donaldson, another former guest of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. His Big Bear will be selecting 5th tonight. You're looking at Robert Morelli in the 6th spot with Team Apollo. Albert Leach, another HSFFhour alumnus, Floating Logs, is drafting 7th tonight for him. Bob Allen's Shamrocks, followed by Remy LeBeau in the 9th spot, another guy that we've had on the show before. Let's wrap things up with Blaine Para's Snowman in the 10th spot. Anita Wank, John Terry, always one with the names, drafting 11th tonight. And then Joshua Lorzel's Snake Jazz is rounding things up from the 12th spot tonight. We already have one round of coverage in tonight. Balazzo ended up taking McCaffrey number 1. No surprise there. Lamb goes 2, followed by Hill to Anand. You're looking at Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall back-to-back at the 4 and 5 tonight. Justin Jefferson is selected by Apollo from the 6th spot. Jamar Chase to Albert Leach in the 7 hole. Jahmyr Gibbs moves up to the 8th spot tonight. That is the Shamrocks, Bob Allen taking him there. His real-life teammate, Amon-Ra St. Brown, being selected 9th. A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, and Garrett Wilson, 4 straight receivers, wrap up round 1. I want to bring up the mojo on Jahmyr Gibbs just because I'm kind of curious about this, Ferrell. FantasyMojo.com is your home for all the FFPC analysis, Stack Finder, ADP, everything you could possibly want to know. It's all there. Darren Armani is the godfather of the FFPC Pros versus Joe's Challenge, which is going to get underway in 9 days. Follow him on X at Fantasy Mojo and make sure that you are subscribing to his website at fantasymojo.com. Over the last 5 days, Ferrell, Jahmyr Gibbs is looking at a second-round pick, the 201 tonight. But I think you have to look at this, and we're going to see this as it goes throughout the draft tonight, not just the first round. You want to get a guy like that. He ain't coming back to you in the second round, and clearly Bob Allen made it a priority that he was going to get Jahmyr Gibbs on his team. Jahmyr Gibbs is a player that might get some more looks in the passing game this year, Ferrell. I think he was, I don't want to say underwhelming, but maybe didn't live up to expectations of what we thought, even though he was a rookie last year. This could be a big year for Mr. Gibbs in Detroit.
I agree, Balky. An ascending player on a team that really knows who they are now. You can't draft Gibbs too high. In a slow main event that I'm drafting in, I was thrilled to see him go in the 12th round. And so that's the big news, or the 12th pick, rather. I was at the end, and he was available in the 12th pick. The big news that keeps surprising me, and I think Snowman is off to a fantastic start here, because A.J. Brown is going to have a career year this season, my prediction. I think he's going to score more points than Chase. I know he's going to score more points than Jefferson. It's amazing to me how he falls back towards the end of this first round in all drafts.
I think I have to ask you then, if you think A.J. Brown is in for a career year, what are your thoughts on Devonta Smith, a player that normally goes, and I don't care if I'm mentioning him and he hasn't been drafted, these guys are all pros. Yeah. Devonta Smith normally goes in the mid-4th round, Ferrell. Is that too high given your expectations for A.J. Brown this year?
Smith's going to have this a similar year to the numbers that he put up last year, and he'll get bargain at that 4th round pick. What's different, of course, is the running back. And this change of scenery is going to be fantastic for both the quarterback and for A.J. Brown. The down and distance situations, how much he has to work to catch these balls. And he's going to catch 100 balls. He's going to have 12 touchdowns. He's going to have 1,500 yards. And I think that outperforms, not by a great deal, but it outperforms some of the receivers that were lining up. Now Smith is a significant player. There's no takeaway from what he's done as a receiver. Perhaps there were not enough. You begin to say, well, are there enough balls in the air to go around? If you look at what Jalen Hurts did last year and what I project him to do this year, we're talking about 4,800 yards for Hurts. That's a good number.
Yeah, it's a
his best ever. And if I'm right, within there's plenty of yardage for Smith.
The second round kicked off here with Sam Laporta going to Joshua Lorzel there. Jonathan Taylor was the second pick of the second round tonight, Ferrell, to John Terry. And we got a question from Doobie in the YouTube chat. You fellas think Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor could both finish as the top guy at their position this year? Not sure what that looks like. Has it ever happened? QB1 and RB1 on the same team? That'd be awesome to see, in my opinion. Yeah, it would be awesome to see. Could that happen? Yes, it could happen. Will it happen? In my opinion, no. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be almost impossible for that to happen this year. I think one could happen, but I don't think both happen. But Ferrell, you know the Colts pretty well. Richardson and Taylor could both have great seasons and still have both these players pay off at ADP, even if they don't finish at number one at their position.
Exactly right. And there's nothing wrong with Jonathan Taylor, but you take these backs and what I just said about Barkley. I like my choices there better. And I guess I will probably end up with the Jonathan Taylor team before it's all over, but I don't know where it's going to be.
Right.
And it hasn't shown up yet because I'm hesitant to pull the trigger on Taylor when I see all the things around him that I like so very, very much.
The second tight end off the board tonight is Travis Kelce to Blaine Para. You already commented on the great start that he's off to from the 10 hole. Devon Achane goes to Remy LeBeau at the 204. followed by Saquon Barkley and Kyron Williams. So 4 out of the last 5 picks there, all running backs. And then we get more receivers going in the second half of the second round. Drake London to Robert Morelli. Devontae Adams ends up going to John Donaldson to pair with his Breece Hall from the first round. One of only 2 teams to go running back tonight is Michael Cullihan's hammer. Derrick Henry pairs with Bijan Robinson. Mark Andrews, just the 3rd tight end in the second round. We only see 3 tight ends in the second round tonight, so something to watch, Ferrell, going forward to see if the tight ends are going to fall tonight. Mark Andrews pairs with Tyreek Hill to Kyle Lanon's team. CeeDee Lamb and Marvin Harrison. That is a lot of targets for the first 2 picks for William Navon's team tonight, and then Chris Olave all the way back to Alex Palazzo to complete the second round tonight. Ferrell, if we have talked about a player significantly already, stop me. But I don't feel like we've talked a whole lot about Drake London. I was talking with Bob Lung last night on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, the founder of the Fantasy Football Expo, Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. And we talked about, and I just kind of whipped myself into a frenzy, being really excited about the Atlanta Falcons this year with Kirk Cousins. I think that Mooney is a guy that a lot of people should be bumping up their draft boards. Yes. But London, I think, is going to be a target monster there this year. I don't think he has a Justin Jefferson-esque season, but he doesn't have to because he's going in the mid-second round tonight. I love that pick here for Robert Morelli right in the middle of the second to go with Jefferson. A lot of targets there. That's a great start.
I do too, and I might be tempted to pull the trigger on a tight end there before I pick London, but you sure can't argue with London in this second round. Balky, Atlanta gives me pause. You know, it just does. But if it's ever going to work for fantasy football, this is the year that the Atlanta Falcons at all these positions are wonderful contributors to our scores.
What do you make of the Marvin Harrison slippage tonight? I mean, this is almost a half round in the second round. He normally goes at the 206. He falls all the way to the 211 tonight. And obviously, Bo knows William Navon's team had to really love that pick there. Do you make anything of this? Is there anything in the news that I'm missing on Harrison, or was this just one of those FFPC drafts where you just never know what's going to happen?
Yeah, he's just sliding a little bit, and he's an exquisite player in a place where if they don't get it from week 1, they will eventually get it during the season. And when you need a player, as we get into the double-digit rounds and the playoffs, Marvin Harrison could be the guy that delivers for you. And he might be great from day 1, but all rookies struggle somewhat in this game. Even a guy with this kind of heritage and lineage and family values in football, he's going to have peaks and valleys, a lot more peaks. And if you're at the end of the second round and you haven't seen him yet, and you don't have him rostered yet, that's probably a good place to get him.
Yeah, that's lovely. Even if you're not a Harrison believer, to get a half round of value. Remember, this is not a half round of value in the 16th or 17th round. This is a half round of value in the second round, which is huge. So kudos to William Navon to get Marvin Harrison there in the second round. We're through 3, and I think there's some interesting starts here. I'll take you through it. Trey McBride ended up going at the 301 tonight to Alex Palazzo, followed by Travis Etienne to Navon. The first team to start off with 2 tight ends happens in the third round tonight. Kyle Anon forcing the issue. Mark Andrews in the second. Dalton Kincaid now in the third. We look at Nico Collins to Michael Cullihan here to go with his 2 dynamite backfield of Robinson and Henry. Cooper Kupp goes to the Big Bear, John Donaldson. Evan Engram off the board tonight as tight end 6, ahead of Kyle Pitts. I'll have to check the mojo on that. I don't know if that's significant or not. Followed by Michael Pittman and Isaiah Pacheco, the 3rd straight running back drafted by the Shamrocks. That's Bob Allen's team, the only team to start with 3 straight running backs tonight. Kyle Pitts to Remy LeBeau, followed by Josh Jacobs, the new Green Bay Packer, to the Snowman, Blaine Para in the 10-hole tonight. And then a couple of receivers off the board. Jalen Waddle goes to John Terry, and then Brandon Ayuk off the board to Joshua Lorzel, and that is your third round. What do you make of the start here? Let's talk about bad stuff happens in the bathroom. Kyle Anon's team in the 3-hole. Bad stuff is either going to happen to his team or to the rest of the league with this start. Mark Andrews and Dalton Kincaid. Ferrell, tight end premium format like the FFPC. I think there are worse ways to spend a second and a third round pick. I kind of like the dynamite aspect there of not only getting the best tight ends on those teams, but those could be the number 1 pass catchers on 2 pretty good offenses that have are probably going to be playing deep into the postseason. They'd love to see that. And then you pair him with Tyreek Hill. That's a dangerous team that's forming in the 3-hole tonight.
If he calls in or joins us on the message board, I'm curious to know if he would have pulled the trigger on McBride first. He came into this knowing he's likely going to go 2 tight ends. He had to have that as his plan. And I'm curious if he just what numbers he expects from Kincaid. And, Kincaid's a marvelous tight end, but when he was drafted, there was just a little bit of hesitancy in me than the fact that he was headed to Buffalo. And it's not my favorite place for him. That offense is very, very fluid. Sure, he's going to get his, but I don't know if I would have taken him there. But everybody else is. So if you're going to have him, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of quarterback he pairs with those tight ends. Because if he takes either of those quarterbacks, I might like his matchups better.
I think what's really compelling, and we might hear from Kyle Anand at some point in the draft tonight, but what's interesting here is if you look at the ADP, Andrews actually goes after Kincaid. In other words, Kincaid goes at the 211, and then Andrews has been falling to the 303 tonight. He basically flipped those. Now it's an interesting point that you bring up with McBride, but I'm kind of wondering if his plan was to take 2 tight ends, why not get McBride or Kincaid in the second round, knowing that Andrews is probably going to fall to you? Mm-hmm. Or if one of those 2 guys doesn't fall, the other one should. So obviously he's putting a premium on Mark Andrews, which is fine. The Shamrocks, Bob Allen's team, is putting a premium on running backs here tonight. He starts off with Gibbs, Barkley, and Pacheco. It's weird because Gibbs should catch a lot of passes. We think Barkley is going to catch a lot of passes, although if Hurts is launching the ball downfield to Goddard, to Smith, and Brown, I don't know if Barkley is going to have that target share that we would kind of expect to see this year. And then we get Pacheco, a guy who's not really a prolific pass catcher, but a guy who runs really hard. This is an interesting mix of running backs. Oftentimes we see teams start off with 3 running backs, Ferrell. They all have something in common. They're all bruising touchdown scores. They're all between the tackle bangers, or they're guys that thrive in space, or they're guys that get a lot of catches. You have a smattering of 3 really different, stylistically different running backs here that Bob Allen goes with. And he's obviously got the handle on the backfield now. I don't think he necessarily needs to go hard on this position. Maybe he only drafts 2 more running backs the rest of the way. I think there's a non-zero chance of that. But the Gibbs, Barkley, Pacheco start, your thoughts on that for Allen?
I love it because Gibbs is a unicorn. Barkley, we've already talked about expectations for his best season, and Pacheco's the hardest runner in an offense that really does a great job of featuring him in all aspects of the game. And there's never a down and distance situation in Kansas City where you don't think Pacheco's going to get the ball. He's always a force to be reckoned with in Kansas City. I like this team a lot. We roll back Balky to the number 4 team. I really like this team a great deal too. As you talk about running backs of different styles, Robinson, Henry, and Collins, then he had a running back in the 4th round. I really love Nico Collins. We talked about it last week. Will you get 3rd round production? Yeah. And you'll want to pay for that. And you'll have to pay for it if you're going to get it through Nico Collins. But I think he may get into point numbers, outpacing Olave, perhaps outpassing Harrison, and passing up Adams as well. So yeah. I really like what he could do. He and London have more in common than they do dissimilarly.
Interesting. We're going to get back to the Nico Collins pick in a little bit. Let me take you through the 4th round here. Snake Jazz, that is Joshua Lorzel's team. He grabs his 3rd receiver in the first 4 rounds of Malik Neighbors. John Terry does the exact same thing with Mike Evans at the 402. It's back-to-back running backs for the Snowman, Blaine Para, Josh Jacobs in the 3rd, Rashad White in the 4th. Then a little mini receiver run here, DJ Moore to Remy LeBeau. Bob Allen takes DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel to Albert Leach, and then Devonta Smith goes off the board to Robert Morelli at the 407. A lot of running backs here then. James Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara goes to Donaldson, goes to Culhane, and goes to Anand, respectively. And then Josh Allen and Kenneth Walker wrap up the 4th round. Ferrell, I was talking I think I was talking with Bob Lung about this too. I'm seeing just a lot of quarterback value this year. I don't know if the value last year we saw really an emphasis on the elite quarterbacks in fantasy football drafts, especially in the FFPC. This year, man, I'm looking at like it's kind of going 18, 19, almost 20 deep. I mean, if you're a Will Levis fan, you can even go deeper than 20 quarterbacks off the board too. So I think there's less. I'm less excited about drafting an elite quarterback here. And it was almost the 5th round before we see a quarterback go off the board tonight in Josh Allen. What do you make of that strategy from all 12 of these guys really waiting on quarterback in this draft?
2022 was the year that people that went quarterback early were rewarded significantly. And so in 2023, we saw a lot of quarterbacks moving up the board. Now, this has fallen back to what I would expect from high-stakes players. And as we get to Planet Hollywood and as we see some of the quarterbacks throwing the ball around in the preseason, the quarterbacks may begin to climb again. But this doesn't surprise me that they're down, that they're here now. And it's one of the reasons I love drafting at this time of the year. And in most of my teams, I've been getting one of the top 6 quarterbacks because they're easy value and easy pickings in the 4th and 5th round.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, if we see a rise of the elite quarterbacks again this year, then yeah, in hindsight, we're going to be like, why did we let these guys slip so far? And maybe a lot of these players make it to the championship round by zagging when everybody else is zigging. It certainly seems to be an every other year thing right now. And maybe this is the year when everybody else is letting these quarterbacks fall. Maybe you should be targeting them. That's another thing to keep in mind here as we move through the 5th round of this live Fantasy Pros Championship draft here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. So glad to have you aboard with us tonight. We are now 25% done with the draft. The 501 tonight, Stephon Diggs goes to Alex Palazzo as his 2nd wide receiver. Jake Ferguson off the board as the tight end 8 tonight to Bo Nose. That's William Navon's squad. Amari Cooper joins Tyreek Hill in the wide receiver room for Kyle Anand. Jalen Hurts off the board as the first quarterback selected by Michael Culhane. You're looking at Zay Flowers as the 3rd wide receiver for John Donaldson. Finally, Apollo, that's Robert Morelli's squad in the 6th hole, has a running back. His name is Ramondre Stevenson, and he goes with the 506 tonight. Patrick Mahomes, the 3rd quarterback drafted, followed by T. Higgins and George Pickens. That is to Leach, to Allen, and to LeBeau. Back-to-back tight ends here in Njoku and Kittle. And then Christian Kirk rounding things off at the 512 as Snake Jazz. We'll get to the 6th round in a little bit. Joshua Lorzel has a cachet of a large cache of receivers going on. He's got cachet with his wide receiver cash from the 12 spot tonight, if I'm speaking correctly. I said we were going to get back to the Nico Collins pick at the 304 tonight for Michael Culhane. What do you make of Stephon Diggs falling to the 501? You're looking at nearly 2 rounds of difference between Collins and Diggs. It sounds like you're willing to pay up for Collins. Is that a value for Diggs for you?
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking at who went after him, and I don't think I prefer any of those guys to him. Maybe Cooper, but yeah, I've really got no problem with Diggs there. As we think back to this time last year, how would you like to be going into a draft with 2 excellent running backs, one of the top young tight ends, and Alexander eggs Diggs, and Diggs is his 2nd wide receiver.
Yeah.
So, there's nothing wrong with that team, and it's all probably going to come together very, very well.
I think and Palazzo's done this before. He knows what he's doing clearly. And obviously getting McCaffrey definitely helps out for sure when you can have the 101 to go with that. Jake Ferguson, Ferrell, is a player that we have talked about on this show before. He is normally going at the 504, so the 502 tonight. So I guess that wasn't. It seemed early, but maybe it's not early. But maybe I'm not even proper. I like Jake Ferguson, but maybe I'm not properly rating him, Ferrell, because this is a player that has been climbing up the draft boards. I'll look at the mojo on him. This is a player that was being had in round 8, in round 9, 3 months ago in drafts, and now you see him rise all the way up until the 4th and 5th round. Nothing's really changed in Dallas. It's weird to see basically a 4-round rise for Jake Ferguson, but that's what we're seeing from this Cowboys tight end right now, man.
I think it's an understanding of who the player is. We've had time to reflect on players that had a big year last year and what they might be looking at this year. And perhaps it also reflects a quarterback is going much, much later in the draft and what we expect out of Dak Prescott this year. You also take a look at Brandon Cooks in that offense, and you say older player, productive player. But we like the tight end in the Cowboys offense, and we especially like this guy. And at 1.5 with his 80 catches, that's $120 for catch value there. That's hard to beat. And he runs a deeper route than some tight ends, and he breaks tackles after he catches it. So yeah. I'm very bullish on Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's sort of a unique. He's not one of these tight ends that is a duplication of skills or skill set in Dallas, right? I think what he does there is very different, obviously very different than what Lamb does. It's different than what Cooks does. It's different than what Tolbert does. Some of these other tight ends, you could kind of make the case that they're not as complimentary as Ferguson is with the rest of these Cowboys receivers, which is another reason people maybe it was just the fact, like, my God, we're letting Ferguson slip too far. Let's start pumping him up. And that's what's happening in FFPC drafts right now. We'll take you through the 6th round. We left you with Christian Kirk at the 5-12. Then Snake Jazz, that is Joshua Lorzel's team. He takes his 5th receiver in the first 6th round with Tank Dell joining Garrett Wilson, Brandon Ayuk, Malik Neighbors, and Christian Kirk. Let's talk about that team in a little bit. Lamar Jackson off the board to John Terry with the 2nd pick of the 6th round. You're looking at Aaron Jones joining the Snowman's roster. Blaine Parra now has taken a receiver in the 1st round, and it's been all tight ends and running backs since then. Zamir White after that to Remy LeBeau. CJ Stroud, the quarterback for both Dell, Diggs, and Collins. He goes as the 5th quarterback selected tonight at the 6:05. Chris Godwin, love that pick there for Al Leach at the 6:06. James Conner after that, joining Ramondre Stevenson in the backfield for one Robert Morelli. And then a bunch of receivers here. McLaurin to Donaldson, Hollywood Brown to Culhane, Keenan Allen to Anand, Calvin Ridley goes off the board to William Navon, and then Jonathan Brooks, the final pick of the 6th round. I will bring this up with you, my friend, regarding Jonathan Brooks. I was really concerned about him for the 2024 season. In Dynasty, okay, I can get on board with that. He's a fantastic talent, really, really good. However, coming off the torn ACL, I was a little bit bearish on what he was going to do in the NFL this year. And now I'm seeing all these players smarter than myself pumping them up and steaming them up the draft boards. And now it seems like everybody knows about the ACL, but nobody seems terribly concerned about it. Running back 22, Ferrell, he's being drafted as a starting running back in the FantasyPros Championship tonight. He goes at the 6-12 tonight. Am I wrong? Should I be less concerned about Jonathan Brooks this year?
It's a wait and see approach for me, Balky. Tell me what the negatives are of this player.
I think the only negative, okay, some people would say, oh, his team is terrible, his offensive line is not great. I don't necessarily always look at that as a negative based on where your ADP is. I mean, if that's your complaint about Jonathan Brooks in the 6th round, to me, then the negative is already baked in there. The concern I have is not this guy's talent, not this guy's chops, not this guy's ability to produce. It's his ability to stay on the field and produce at a level that he would have produced at had he had this year of ACL recovery behind him or never torn his ACL. That's the thing I have. That's the big negative I have with Brooks. 2025, I think he is a 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick in this format, right? But 2024, first year coming off the ACL, we've seen guys struggle with that before, and that's what has me nervous about that player.
We have a lot of our drafters will not take a player of that type of injury, a proven veteran player, until they see what he can do when he comes back. Now, this is a much more complicated situation. So I'm with you. I'm hesitant with this player. I think it's a definition of how the running back pool begins to thin out in these 7, 8, and 9 rounds. And, Team 8, which went 3 fantastic running backs to start this draft. Team number 4, 3 of their 4 running backs. 10's gone a little overboard on running backs, but all in all, that's why I think we see Brooks there. I think I would probably like some of the 7th round running backs better.
And by the way, for a guy who was curious about Jonathan Brooks, I did just take him in my Scott Fishbowl team. I was like, you know what? There's no entry fee here. Let's see what happens with Jonathan Brooks on this roster. So I took him as my third running back there. Let's get you through the 7th round here, this Fantasy Pros Championship, where people are putting real money in, trying to win $1 million in this competition. Lad McConkey at the 701 to Alex Palazzo. David Montgomery is the number 2 running back for William Navon's squad from the from the 2-hole tonight. DeAndre Swift joins Alvin Kamara in Kyle Anand's running back room. Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, and Christian Watson off the board to the Hammer, to Big Bear, and to Apollo from the 4, 5, 6. Brock Bowers is the first tight end drafted by Al Leach. DeAndre Hopkins and Deontay Johnson, respectively, to Bob Allen and Remy LeBeau. Then you're looking at Jalen Warren and Najee Harris back-to-back. Those Pittsburgh Steelers running backs here go to Blaine Parra and John Terry, and then Anthony Richardson wrapping things up in the 7th round. I mentioned the Warren and Harris thing. I feel like we've talked about this a lot, and I'm a little surprised that it seems like everything I read, every high-stakes player I talk to, every podcast I listen to, everybody likes Warren so much better than Harris. And I say everybody in quotation marks because not everybody does. But I really can't find a whole lot of people that are singing the praises of drafting Najee Harris over Jalen Warren. Yet these guys still remain back-to-back in drafts. I don't get this, how there's not more separation here. Jalen Warren is going at the 802 in drafts. Najee Harris, 709 on average tonight. So these guys are definitely on brand with their ADP tonight, and yet Harris is still going ahead of Warren. I really like Warren. Dwayne McFarland from Fantasy Life was just talking about how much he loved Jalen Warren this year, was drafting Jalen Warren all over the place, and yet they go back-to-back, Ferrell. Do you have a dog in this fight?
I really don't. But I can understand there's no explanation of why they go back-to-back or this close, why their ADP is this close. There has been encouraging commentary about Harris, what he's done with his body, how he's ready to come back and play. Harris, and these are I'm purely guessing, but I think we were knocking on about 230 carries last year for Harris, and a average per carry of less than slightly less than 4 yards. But we're still a player like that is still producing significant fantasy numbers. Warren is not necessarily a change of pace back, and there might have been some injury that let Harris play more in front of Warren last year. This is one of those things that I want to see in training camp. I want to see how it looks like. I don't want to mess with the Pittsburgh backfield at this point in time. And there's some of the guys that are going in the round behind them that I like better and seem much less complicated.
Najee Harris did get over 1,000 yards last year, just 1,035, 255 carries, 4.1 yards per carry, which is
265, you said?
255. 255, yeah.
That's fantastic.
I mean, it's really 4.1. I did not think it was going to be that high. Only 29 catches. I think that's the frustrating thing with Najee Harris. Let's get you through the 8th round here, ladies and gentlemen, as it just wrapped up. Zach Moss, the former teammate of Anthony Richardson, now a Cincinnati Bengal, goes to the 12 spot tonight. That is Joshua Lorzell's team. He drafts Richardson, the Colt, at the 712, and Zach Moss, the Bengal, at the 801. John Terry is now doubled up on tight ends, and I like that combo. George Kittle in the 5th. Now he gets Dallas Goedert at the 802. Henry Muto is in the chat right now. He's talking about how Team 12 hates running backs and Team 10 hates wide receivers. Well, you can't hate them too much. You used your first pick on a wide receiver, did the snowman, Blaine Parra.
We predicted Brown would be so fantastic, he decided he didn't need another.
Yeah, exactly.
He said, "Well, the hell, I don't know."
The HSFF hour guys love Brown. I'll just focus on running backs and tight ends here, which is what he's been doing. Tony Pollard at the 803 for Para. Jordan Addison off the board. Another team, Remy LeBeau, loading up on wide receivers. Raheem Mostert joins that loaded backfield for Bob Allen's Shamrock squad. Gibbs, Barkley, Pacheco, and now Mostert. Xavier Worthy, the rookie in Kansas City, goes to Al Leach, followed by Tyjae Spears, the second Titans running back to be drafted in the 8th round here. TJ Hawkinson and Pat Freiermuth, back-to-back tight ends, as Donaldson and Culhane now have their tight ends on their roster, number 1 tight ends on the roster. Devin Singletary, the new New York Giant, goes as the third running back to Kyle Anand. And then you're looking at Austin Eckler at the end of the 8th, followed by Keon Coleman to Navon and Balazzo, respectively. So a lot of action to discuss in the 8th round. Let's go to John Terry's squad, Ferrell. I just told you how much I love that tight end pairing. Look at what John Terry did. He's done a ton of these drafts. He ends up going from the 11th spot tonight, does not take a tight end in the first 4 rounds, and gets 2 pretty good ones here prior to round 9 in George Kittle and Dallas Goedert. That is a good investment of resources. I love what he did at tight end, and he didn't have to spend up to get it.
I don't like Terry's tight ends because I think he overpaid for declining production. Kittle, on this show, we talk so much about it. He's required to do so much in the 49er offense that a lot of it is not catching passes. And in fantasy football, I think Kittle's one of the greatest football players in the whole NFL. But in fantasy football, we're in a situation where I much prefer.
Blocking doesn't count in fantasy football.
I much prefer a guy like Ingram who lines up and runs a few steps. Goddard, very much the same thing. I think we've seen his best statistical production. So in my mind, and John will definitely be able to fire back with logic that outstretches my imagination. But in my mind, he's drafted 2 tight ends that are the same statistical guy.
Speaking of tight ends, John Donaldson's Big Bear squad did not have one coming into the 8th round. He grabs TJ Hawkinson here as the 13th tight end off the board. He normally goes to the 14th tight end at the 8:11. He gets him at the 8:08 tonight. So very, very close to ADP. What's interesting about Hawkinson is the fact that he is so awesome and has put up great numbers. But the 2 things that are massive question marks this year, number 1, the knee, the recovery off that torn ACL, and number 2, the quarterback. I don't know. Here's the thing. I think right now Darnold and McCarthy are talented enough to carry one really good receiver on Minnesota. I don't think they're talented enough to carry 2 or 3 great pass catchers, which is what it would take for Hawkinson to have value. However, these guys are drafting for $1 million. They have to plant their flag somewhere. John Donaldson, to me, this is a flag plant, waiting on tight end, drafting Hawkinson. So he knows he's probably going to have to get 1, maybe 2 other guys for the first couple months of the season. But if he's lucky enough to stay afloat, make the playoffs, and sneak into the championship round, that Hawkinson pick could be a pretty big X factor for him. What do you make of TJ Hawkinson this year going in the mid to late 8th of the Fantasy Pros Championship? I
think he's looking in the rearview mirror, remembering the Hawkinson of old. And I think Freiermuth is due for a bounce back season. God, I should hope so. I believe Dalton Schultz will be a better pass catcher and will benefit from all the new weapons down in Houston. In other words, he'll be wide open in the middle of the field for a quarterback that extends plays. And although I have never been a Cole Kmet fan, I think this young quarterback leans on him after his newly acquired running back as a check down artist. That's going to be one of the players, Kmet, that he leans on besides his stellar wide receiver. So he waited on tight end, and then he took Hawkinson in front of these guys, which I wouldn't have done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I understand the upside for Hawkinson, but you don't want to draft based on what happened last year. You want to draft based on what's going on this year. And Hawkinson could be a player at the end of the season. We're like, my God, I can't believe we're sinking 8th round picks into this guy. He was a bum. There's a non-zero chance of that happening. He could also be a guy that comes on at the end of the season too. You just never know how these things are going to work out, especially with the change of quarterback too. That's something that we haven't talked about enough. Let's go through the 9th round here. Ferrell, Dalton Schultz off the board to Alex Balazzo here at the 901. Jackson Smith and Jigba is now the 4th receiver, joining his former collegiate teammate on William Navon's team. Marvin Harrison and JSN reunited on Bo Nose here tonight. Huge running back run here in the 9th round. You got Kyle Anand taking Javonte Williams. You got Brian Robinson going to Michael Culhane. Nick Chubb to John Donaldson, followed by Blake Corum to Apollo. That is Robert Morelli's team. Trey Benson, another rookie running back, comes off the board right after Corum here. Trey Benson going to Al Leach. Cole Kmet, Chase Brown right after that, followed by Curtis Samuel and Brian Thomas. Kmet going to Allen, Chase Brown going to Remy LeBeau. Curtis Samuel off the board to the Snowmen. That is Blaine Paris squad. And then Brian Thomas and Marshawn Lloyd wrapping things up. This was the rookie round here, Ferrell, as Brian Thomas goes to Terry, Marshawn Lloyd goes to Joshua Lorzel. I'm counting 4 rookies, I think, in this round. Quorum, Benson, Thomas, and Lloyd. Yeah, 4 rookies go off the board here. Do you have a favorite among those rookie running backs? Not just running backs. Let's include Thomas in this as well. But Quorum with the Rams, Trey Benson with the Cardinals. You got Brian Thomas catching passes from Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Marshawn Lloyd running behind Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. They all go in the 9th round. Which one was your favorite?
Ooh, that's a good question, buddy.
Bit of a loaded question, too.
That is a very good question. I'm curious to see what Thomas brings to Jacksonville. I don't know enough about Lloyd, so if I got to pick a favorite, I'm going to go with Benson here. That's what I want to do. Although I think the steal of this round, and I think time will prove me right, is Javonte Williams. I think coming in with this team, with this coach, and what you must get out of that running back, and the fact that he's a 3-down running back. Now he's got a pass catching, change of pace running back backing him up, but I think Williams gets a lot of work, and he returns to the game healthy. We roll back until the 8th round. I was talking with a guy today about Austin Eckler, and he was hesitant to draft Austin Eckler, not because of Austin Eckler's last year performance. And you'll see some of these guys that come in here. Some of the guys will come in here and talk about Eckler's career being over with. And it sure wasn't over in week 1. And then he got hurt, and he missed 3 games. He came back and played hurt the entire season. And naturally, his numbers don't look right, nor did he look right on the field. But he comes back healthy, and they say, well, he's splitting time. Roll back to all those productive years with the Chargers. You'll see that he was only on the field about 65% of the snaps. Austin Eckler is a producer, and whatever they let him do, he's going to be a big fantasy producer. And so team number 2, who waited on running back, got excellent wide receivers with very, very high ceilings, now gets a player that 60 catches, 1,000 yards in the 8th round. Fantastic.
I want to talk about Marshawn Lloyd here real quick because Guile22 in the YouTube just posted, in the YouTube chat posted, Josh Jacobs is the A.J. Dillon role this year. Marshawn Lloyd is the Aaron Jones role. And I just want to expand on that because I think that you could make the case that that's how the Packers are going to deploy the running backs. I look at this backfield as, excuse me, the roles being totally different. The only similarity I see between the Packers backfield in 2024 and the Packers backfield in 2023 is the fact that it's probably going to be a 65-35 split. And that might not happen right away. They could ride Josh Jacobs a little bit harder earlier in the season until they can trust Marshawn Lloyd. They're going to pay Jordan Love $60 million a year. You want to be able to pass protect if you're that running back on that team. And I don't know if Marshawn Lloyd is there yet. They want to see him do that first. So maybe it's more like a 75-25 split, and I think it gets to 65-35 by the end of the season. But I don't think the roles are similar. I think you could. Excuse me, I'm getting all emotional talking.
Well, because you're talking about your Packers, and the more you talk about it, I mean, pretty soon you're going to have Lloyd sitting up in the stands with you. But I agree 100% with you. They didn't hire Josh Jacobs to come to this team to resemble the backup running back which they previously had.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the Jacobs show. I think Lloyd does take away from that, but how many times have we seen it, Ferrell? And just let's throw the Packers out of the equation here. These rookie running backs come in, and we usually have to wait for year 2 for them to be fantasy relevant in capital letters. Like I think a lot of times we draft on the promise of these guys coming in and being a big factor right away. And that doesn't always happen. And I think that could be the case with Blake Corum. It could be the case with Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, Marshawn Lloyd, all these running backs this year. It remains to be seen. And I think the fantasy drafters are treating them as such right now.
And the drafters that take Jacobs in the 3rd round, if you're correct, and it is a 65-35 split, and Josh Jacobs has a year that looks like Harris, although he'll catch more passes. If he has a year that looks like Najee Harris, where he gains about 4.23 yards a carry and scores 10 touchdowns and only catches 40 passes, then everyone will call him a bust.
Yeah, that's true. And
he's not a bust.
But I mean, if he puts up those numbers and you're sinking a 3rd round pick into him, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, you're going to be disappointed. So if you think like Balky and I do, go ahead and be happy to get your Jacobs. And if you think like everybody else, wait till he falls to the 4th round and get him.
And then you really got to hop on him for sure. Let's hop on the 10th round here. Jalen Wright. So it's back-to-back rookie running backs for Joshua Lorzel's team in the 12 spot. Marshawn Lloyd at the 9-12, and then the 10-01 Jalen Wright. It is 4 straight rookie players overall drafted. Brian Thomas, Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright, and Rome Odunze now to John Terry at the 10-02, followed by Jordan Love to the Snowman Blaine Parra as his number 1 quarterback. Jerome Ford going with Chase Brown, back-to-back running backs for Remy LeBeau. Jamison Williams out of Detroit. He is joining Jahmyr Gibbs, his real-life teammate on Bob Allen Shamrock's team. Tyler Conklin, a 2nd tight end drafted by Al Leach here. Couple of quarterbacks. This is a lot of quarterbacks going in this round. I think somebody pointed out that the quarterbacks are falling. We're seeing a lot of them go here. Joe Burrow ends up going to Robert Morelli. Dak Prescott, Ferrell, who you mentioned earlier, he falls to the 10-08 tonight as the 9th quarterback off the board. Dak Prescott to John Donaldson. Cortland Sutton and Brock Purdy. After that, Brock Purdy going to Kyle Anand. Khalil Shakir at the 10-11, and then Kyler Murray at the 10-12. What do you think of that stack there? The Trey McBride, Kyler Murray stack for Alex Palazzo in the 1 spot. You think there's a big conversation in the YouTube chat for tonight's show tonight on the importance of stacking. Do you think stacking is important in a league like this where it's not best ball and you can modify your lineup every week?
I love doing it because you want to catch an offense with a hot hand, and you want to catch an offense that will score a lot of points. And I'm not a big Kyler Murray fan, and I would have done something different there, but I can understand that play. And yeah, I enjoy that because if your team has favorable matchups, or if you have a team that has to go and score points to compete. For instance, if you had a Raiders stack, you got to get Kansas City twice a year, and you got to score some points. And so that's good for the players that you happen to like at the Raiders. And if you've got a stack of Cleveland Browns that have to play the Baltimore Ravens twice before the playoff starts, then I'm not so interested in that. So I think it's team dependent, like all things are. So stacking for stacking, just you're going to have to strategize it. You just can't do it out of convenience.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. What I always say this too, like whether it's best ball, whether it's I think if I'm in a close 12-team league, I really don't care at that point. But best ball or KFFSC main event or, any of these national tournaments like this, I think if it happens, hey, that's awesome. I'm not going to go out of my way to do it, but I might break ties in favor of stacking at that point. But I don't.
In the draft that I'm in the main event right now, in the 12th position, took Gibbs, and there's a competitor there that has with golf, 4 other lines.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's that. And that could work out. I mean, you never know. That could work out because Detroit's going to put up a lot of points again this year. The problem is I think their defense got better. And one of the worst things to have, one of the best things to have to win real life fantasy games is a good defense. One of the worst things to have is a good defense, because then that hurts your fantasy players a little bit.
I think people are writing down that quote right now.
Yeah, I don't even know if
it's
it may not even be accurate, but it's just always been my belief system. We are halfway home on this Fantasy Pros Championship draft here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Thank you so much for spending your Friday evening watching this draft as Ferrell and I call the action. Let's get underway in the second half of this draft. Alex Palazzo takes Tyler Lockett to kick things off here at the 11:01. Isaiah Likely pairing with Jake Ferguson at the 11:02. 11:02 tonight. That's to William Navon. Mike Williams goes to Kyle Anand. Ezekiel Elliott to the Hammer. Michael Culhane takes him there as his number 5 running back. Luke Musgrave. We talked about the tight end, what you were going to do if you're John Donaldson here to make sure you have a tight end to start the season that's healthy. He gets Hockenson in the 8th. He goes with Musgrave, stays in the NFC North, and gets Musgrave at the 11:05. Speaking of the NFC North, Ty Chandler is Apollo's pick there. That's Robert Morelli's squad. Gus Edwards after that to Al Leach, followed by Jacoby Myers from Ferrell's Las Vegas Raiders. Trevor Lawrence is the final first quarterback drafted tonight. The last team without a quarterback now has one. Remy LeBeau waits until the 11th round to grab Trevor Lawrence as the 12th quarterback off the board. Romeo Dobbs, Zach Charbonnet, and Kendra Miller all finished the round here in the 11th. We'll talk about Trevor Lawrence in a second because Remy went back-to-back quarterbacks here, and I want to talk about that strategy in a second. Two of my favorite running back picks, Ferrell, in this round. Ty Chandler to Robert Morelli at the 11:06. Kendra Miller at the 11:12 tonight to Joshua Lorzel. Joshua Lorzel, by the way, has now drafted 5 straight running backs after not taking a single one in the first 7 rounds. So we'll talk about that team. But Chandler and Miller, I think people are overrating Aaron Jones this year. I think they're not talking about Chandler enough. And I think the same could be said for Alvin Kamara. I think this could be a big-time Kendra Miller year. And the fact that, I mean, where did Kamara go tonight in tonight's draft? He ended up being drafted at the 410 tonight. And Kendra Miller goes 7 rounds later. That's too big of a difference. I love Miller and I love Chandler. And most importantly, I love their ADP. And I love where they went tonight in the 11th round. So good on Morelli and good on Lorzel for drafting him here. 2 of my favorite picks in the 11th round.
11th round running back that I like is Zach Charbonnet. I think his game has developed. The changes there in the offense are likely to benefit him. Elite wide receivers create a lot of opportunities in the red zone. I'm a big Walker fan, so naturally I think we're just talking handcuffs there. I was interested to see if the Kamara choice that if you stack Miller with that. He didn't. You're high on that Ty Chandler, and you know more about Aaron Jones than anyone in the FFPC world. You do, Balky. You do. And
well, I'll say. Let me couch what you just said here.
Yeah,
I would say this. You know this better than anybody. I have been such a huge Aaron Jones fan over the last 3, 4, 5 years or whatever. I continuously have said this guy is underdrafted. You need to draft him. The fact, and I know people are just going to call me a homer, the fact that I'm off in this year, but that guy had 3 serious injuries last year. Nobody remembers the third one because it happened in the postseason. But he's not a young man anymore. And these soft tissue injuries just don't go away when you get this old. So the fact that, where did Aaron Jones go tonight in tonight's draft? He ends up being selected in the 6th round. Okay. I can kind of get on board with that a little bit, but even that is a little bit too rich for me. So the fact that I'm off Aaron Jones and I'm liking Ty Chandler this year, and I've been Aaron Jones super fan for the last half decade, I think tells you all you need to know. I don't necessarily think I know anything more about him than a lot of other people know, but I do, I saw this guy up close. I followed his career. And this, to me, it's just not a good year to be in business with Aaron Jones.
And you know what? We've been trying to get value out of the number 2 running back position in Minnesota ever since the Boone guy. We've been going back years and years. It's Madison, it's Boone, it's who's and maybe this is the year. It well could be this year.
Yeah, it very well could be. And we'll see what happens with that. That's the beauty of this. We're less than 2 months away from real live NFL football. The 12th round is complete. Jaleel McLaughlin, the 5th straight running back drafted by Joshua Lorzel here. Zach Moss, Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright, Kendra Miller, and now Jaleel McLaughlin here to kick off the 12th round. Kamani Vidal, 12:02, Dontavian Wicks, and Jared Goff to Remy LeBeau here. Ray Davis, another rookie, goes to Bob Allen. J.K. Dobbins, another Chargers running back here off the board, as now all 3 Chargers running backs have gone in the span of 1 round. Al Leach doubling up on him as he gets Edwards and Dobbins, the former Ravens turned Chargers. Speaking of the Chargers, Joshua Palmer is the next pick at the 12:07. Tua Tagovailoa is going to be backing up Dak Prescott for John Donaldson here. Hunter Henry, the 2nd tight end drafted by the Hammer, Michael Cullen, and Rashid Shaheed, Rico Dowdle, and Elijah Mitchell wrap up the 12th round. I teased it a little bit earlier. I wanted to talk with you about Remy LeBeau's quarterbacks here. First 10 rounds, he focuses on getting Kyle Pitts and then stacking the running backs and receivers. Now he has Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff here, Ferrell. You wait on – this is what I'm talking about. You wait on quarterback this year and get those 2 guys. I think that's a pretty strong tandem to have. Good on Remy LeBeau.
I wish he would drop in and tell us if he's really – stacked the schedules, because I believe with Jared Goff, you start him every week at home. So I wonder if he stacked the schedules and sees a great link between Goff and Lawrence. Now I've team number 8, Balky, that started out with Gibbs. Who is that?
That's Bob Allen.
Bob Allen is on fire. I did not like his T. Higgins pick, but other than that, this is a tremendous team to put together, and he's done it with established names, youthful players that are coming into their own, that started as top performers. And then we talked about the rookie running backs in round 11. His rookie running back in round 12 is one of the hardest runners and one of the guys that I'm most fascinating to see. And, we talk about how many wide receivers there are in the double-digit rounds. Mm-hmm. I think he has 2 real pros at that position that are both going to flirt with 70, 75 catches and 5 touchdowns.
The other thing with Ray Davis to keep in mind here, who Bob Allen took in the 12th round, James Cook was pretty inefficient last year, and I know there's a lot of people down on James Cook this year. And if you're down on James Cook, you should be up on Ray Davis. So Ray Davis making a pretty good, nice selection for a lot of people in the 12th round. Let's go out. I'm going to try. I don't think his camera's working, but let's see if we can get audio. We are now being joined by Team 1 tonight, the Spearmint Rhinos. Alex Balazzo is here. Oh, there he's got his camera going. There he is.
Good.
Alex Balazzo, welcome aboard, man.
How you guys doing?
We're doing good. Thank you for the kind words in the YouTube chat. We appreciate it. You had to be pretty excited. You had to be pretty excited to get the 101 tonight, man. How's your team shaping up?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. Like, I'm normally not a 101 guy. I like being at the end, 11 or 12, right? But, I like back-to-back picks. It's always best. So I like it. I mean, it's, Jonathan Brooks, you were saying it, right? So that's not a pick for the first 6 weeks, but I think that he's a guy who could come back, week 9, 10, and just be that guy for the end of the season, right? So I've already got Kenneth Walker and Christian McCaffrey. They're going to be my 2 horses. I'll pick a couple guys here that I can fill in if I need to, but I kind of think he's a guy who could, be a make or break for some teams that make the playoffs. And I think it's just a solid team. It's not sexy, but it's solid.
Yeah, and the sexy part is Jonathan Brooks, as you said. I mean, if he comes on at the end of this year, a la Breece Hall did, coming off his ACL, now all of a sudden you're looking at McCaffrey, Walker, and Jonathan Brooks as a monster running back trio that you can trot out in the championship round. Let's talk about your 7 and 8 picks here. The 7th round, you take Ladd McConkey. At the end of the 8th round, you end up taking Keon Coleman. Back-to-back rookie receivers there. And I think that the tie that binds them together, Alex, they could be the number 1 pass catchers on their teams this year. They're young, they're unproven, but that's part of the reason you get them in the 7th and 8th round.
Yeah, I've been taking them in every draft. If I can get both of them in every draft, I'm taking them. I actually think that their situation is better than some of these other guys who are getting drafted in front of them. I just do. I think Keon Coleman's going to have 65, 70 catches, 6 or 7. He's just going to get a ton of balls from Josh Allen. Ladd McConkey is the perfect complement to Justin Hebert or Herbert. Sorry, my old age, right?
Bobby Hebert.
Hebert.
But yeah. George Costanza will figure that out. Now, okay. So if you think that's going to be Coleman, I got news for you. Oh, look, we just lost him.
Well, the thing is, Alex is on the clock right now as he is.
He dumped us, man.
He might have. I'll pop him out and I'll pop him back in when he's ready.
Well, here's what I would like to congratulate him on is his Jahan Dotson pick. I think everyone has forgotten that Jahan Dotson had that hamstring issue last year.
But that's why I had the draft, guys.
Hey, welcome back. I'm lauding you on your Jahan Dotson pick, and I'm going to tell you, based on the numbers you just gave for Coleman, which I think a lot of that production will come at the end of the season. I don't say that for every rookie, although it sounds like I am here tonight. But I think Jahan Dotson's a 75 catch player and 5 touchdowns, and you're getting him in the 13th round.
To me, that's crazy that he's going in the 13th round.
And what draws you to him? What?
I remember the first year, right? And not the second year. I remember the first year. He was the guy. I mean, McLaurin is the number 1, but for whatever reason, like Dotson, man, he runs great routes, right? Mm-hmm. He's clean. He's got great hands. And I just think that if you believe in Jaden Daniels and you believe that they're going to have a pretty decent year, how can you not love the number 2 there? Right. I mean,
exactly.
McLaurin's going to get the best, get the best coverage for the most part. And you got a guy who I think could catch 75 balls in that offense with Jaden Daniels just flinging it around.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Yeah, for sure. And Alex, the other thing I think we need to bring up here is where your loyalties lie and your fandom lies, because I see McCaffrey at the 101. I see Elijah Mitchell at the 12, which obviously makes sense with McCaffrey. But then you go with the third Niner here at the 1501. In fact, the first defense off the board, you take the Niners, my friend. Does this have anything to do with where your proximity is in the United States, that you now have 3 San Francisco 49ers in the first 75% of the draft?
Just for you guys tonight, I was going to go McCaffrey, Ayuk, Debo, and then Kittle, and then just do it all for you guys. Just rip all Niners. Right?
I think your 13th round defense suggests that you already think you're in Kentucky. That's what I think is going on here.
I actually think the Niners defense is going to be insane this year. I think they have the best secondary they've had in 10 years, right? I think Leonard Floyd, opposite of Bosa, is the best pass rusher he's had ever opposite of him. I think they could be really great. That's just me. So if I'm going to get one, I might as well at that point just pull the trigger and see if I can have a few points ahead of everybody else.
Was Kyler Murray still the pick for you there at the 10-12 if you would not have gotten Trey McBride, Alex?
I wanted either Murray, or if I didn't have Trey McBride, I wouldn't have taken Kyler Murray.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't. I usually target Brock Purdy around 10, 11, 12.
Of course.
That's kind of my guy.
Right.
But if I had Trey McBride, Kyler Murray was an easy pick.
Alex, you draft a lot of Fantasy Pros teams. I wonder if you could pull something like that off. I mean, obviously you'd have to get the first pick again, but could you pull off a McCaffrey, Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle, Mitchell, Purdy, Niners defense team? That would be amazing.
Hold on. In a month and a half, that's challenge accepted. I'm going to do that. I will do that. It's happening, man.
And it's happening for your team tonight. We've been pretty effusive in our praise for the team. It sounds like you're getting your guys, which is all you really want to do anyway.
And, Balky, the Kate Otten pick, it's obvious you needed another tight end because you're so weak at the position going in the 14th round. I think that did the dog make that pick? I'm concerned about how that pick.
Look, let me just tell you this. Baker Mayfield is a scatterbrain, right? But
no.
I'm just telling you, like in the 9th, 10th week, when some of these guys get hurt and I need to stuff someone in there, I mean, he's going to start. He's going to get some targets. And at some point, I'll take a shot at a guy at 1.5, 1.5 PPR. I got no problem with that. I think that he's a guy who Baker Mayfield, at the end of the year last year, he was getting some nice run. And so I think, you know what, why not take a flyer in this league, especially?
I would really love Otten as a player if he wore number 00. I think that's what would make me think that I want to be in business with him.
As a tribute to Jim Otto, Ferrell? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get it. I will say this about Otten too. Mike Evans, not a young man anymore as far as NFL receivers go. And, we have seen him deal with injuries over the course of his career. I'm not saying he's injury prone, but I am saying we know his age and we know what usually happens with father time. And if he does miss any time, Otten could easily step in there as one of your flexes. And then the other thing to keep in mind too, Dave Canales, everybody wants to talk about how Canales isn't there anymore in Tampa. But remember, he really wanted to run the ball. And the guy they got in there now, and his name's escaping me, I apologize for that, but he loves to throw it. So Tampa could be throwing it a lot this year, which is also, mazel, good things for Cade Otton.
Well, I think between Godwin and Mike Evans, you got guys who are going to miss time, right? So Rashad White is going to catch his balls, but I think Otton's a guy who could, average 4 to 5 passes. Even if he's getting 4 to 5 passes for 40 yards and a half a touchdown, I'll take that in the 14th round. I just think it happens over the course of the
fair enough.
Course. Yeah, that's just me.
Alex, we're so thankful that we were able to talk with you tonight, man. Good draft so far. Keep it up. Finish up strong. You got 5 picks left. I know you're going to make the best out of them, and we'll probably see. I would set the over/under on Niners being selected in those 5 picks. Probably about 2.5.
You just wait. It's coming. Those are my next 2 picks.
They got a kicker.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
If someone doesn't take him, that's in round number 16. So I'm telling you, give me Moody in 16. No one take this guy.
And we will see if it comes to fruition. I think it's a very real possibility of that happening. Alex, be good. Thank you so much.
too,
Good
guys.
luck
Thank
this season, man. Thank you so much for
Keep up
joining
the
us.
good work. All right,
Thank
guys.
you. We appreciate it. The Spearmint Rhinos franchise owner, Alex Palazzo, who's drafting out of the 1 spot tonight, joining us here in the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hours. We bring you live coverage of the Fantasy Pros Championship. All 12 of these owners, including Alex Palazzo, going for that $1 million grand prize this year. If you want to join them, go to myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. Sign up for leagues today. We do have drafts popping off each and every day. There is a midnight draft tonight. I should bring this up before we go off the air. 9 spots still available for that draft starting in about 45 minutes. So make sure you're signing up for that one. Let's take you through the 15th round. As we mentioned, Alex did take the Niners defense there, followed by Quentin Johnston to team number 2 tonight. That is William Navon's squad. Khalil Herbert, who's picking up a little bit of steam lately. It seems like he is just a cult favorite. He is a cult favorite in the same way Empire Records was a cult favorite movie for Generation X in the 90s. That is Khalil Herbert, the cult favorite running back to draft in high stakes fantasy football. Noah Fant after that to Michael Cullen. Damian Pierce, the 3rd straight running back drafted by John Donaldson. And then another defense, the Ravens defense, this time goes to Robert Morelli. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Michael Wilson, Audric Estime, the Denver Broncos running back to Remy LeBeau, Roman Wilson, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Jalen Polk. So there are some interesting receivers in this round, Ferrell, I think we should talk about. And number 1, how about the number 1 pick from last year for the Chargers, Quentin Johnston? He goes to William Navon tonight as his, this would have been his 7th receiver here, a wide receiver 69. Do you think Quentin Johnston is getting a bad rap, Ferrell? Because it was a rookie year for him last year. Mm-hmm. There is a learning curve. He was behind Williams. He was behind Allen. He was behind Palmer. Are you a believer in Quentin Johnston making a sophomore leap in 2024?
You love the athlete, but you question the desire and the way in which the Chargers want to play. And there's where you get in trouble with fantasy football and this player, because he has to overcome this attack in the way Harbaugh and his offensive coordinator will execute it. So this is a no-go for me. I think there's rookie receivers that I'm curious about that I will like better than Quentin Johnston. But Quentin Johnston has all the skills to be what Mike Williams used to be for the Chargers. But he's young. He's unproven. Does the quarterback trust him? Does he have the habits to he doesn't look like a blocker, and that's always required in that offense.
Right.
A lot of question marks.
I think the other receiver I want to talk about here before we move on to the 16th round, and we'll tell you the shocking yet unshocking picks that Alex Palazzo made there, but Wan'Dale Robinson at the 15-11 tonight to John Terry. I think this guy is flying under the radar a little bit this year.
I'm glad Mr. Terry finally did something correct in lining up with a true value. No, Wan'Dale Robinson, late single-digit pick last year.
Yep.
Is tremendous value here this year. He will be better. Everything about the Giants will be better. If the quarterback is to succeed, he needs Wan'Dale Robinson. Sterling Shepard has packed his bags and moved on to Tampa. Wan'Dale Robinson has a red carpet laid out to him for fantasy production this year.
I feel like it's within his skill set to be a pretty good, not a perfect, but a pretty good complement to what Malik Neighbors should be doing on that team. And then you think about the departure of Darren Waller off that team. And you have Daniel Bellinger, who is he's all right. He's not bad. He's all right.
He's a good player.
And then Theo Johnson, again, an uber athlete. Does that athleticism translate to making plays on an NFL football field? I'm still not sold on that. Could happen this year. But I think the way it's shaping up for Wan'Dale Robinson, I think makes him a really, really nice value in the 15th round. He normally goes, I'm just looking at the mojo on him, in the 17th round. So you know that John Terry got his guy there to take Wan'Dale Robinson about a round plus ahead of where he normally goes. The 16th round is now complete. Jonnu Smith, the new Miami Dolphins tight end, to Joshua Lorzel, who's actually hanging out in the YouTube chat. So hello, Josh. Thanks for joining us as we comment on you drafting your team tonight. Just one of the many perks you have when you sign up for a live on hsffhour draft at myffpc.com. Matthew Stafford backing up Lamar Jackson for John Terry. Demarcus Robinson, another guy that has gotten a lot of the pundits singing his praises. He goes to Blaine Para at the 1603. Jelani Woods, the Indianapolis Colts tight end, is joining Kyle Pitts on Remy LeBeau's tight end room. A couple of defenses here, the Cowboys defense and then the Jets defense. Another tight end, Juwan Johnson, to Robert Morelli here. That's Team Apollo as he gets drafted at the 1607. Alexander Madison, the fourth straight running back drafted by John Donaldson. John Donaldson now has 7 running backs in his stable there. Love this pick. Jermaine Burton in the 16th round to the hammer. Michael Cullen taking him there. Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson then go off the board after that. Rodgers to Kyle Anand, Deshaun Watson to William Navon, and then Jake Moody. No surprise. Alex Palazzo said, on the bill. He's like, if Moody's there in the 16th, I'm taking him. That is his 4th San Francisco 49er on the squad right now. So that wraps up the 16th round. Ferrell, what do you make? We have not talked a whole lot about Michael Cullen's squad from the 4th spot tonight, but I love this Jermaine Burton pick at the 1609. Not necessarily because T. Higgins and Jamar Chase wanting new contracts there, and it seems like there could be a little bit of an unrestful situation there. I just love his talent. I know how excited Zach Taylor is to have him aboard. I love him in the 16th round.
Top round draft pick with a mind, a offensive mind in the coaching staff, which is willing to take risk, and tremendous skill at the quarterback position is always things that you can put together. It's like you're holding aces and you're waiting to see what Burton might do. And
right.
That's a wonderful way to complete that round. Yeah.
I love that pick. That was my favorite pick of the 16th round, although Demarcus Robinson is a close second as he goes to Blaine Para here at the 1603. 17th round, Alex Palazzo once again. He was singing the praises of Baker Mayfield. He now has a cheap Buccaneer stack here with Otten at the 1412 and Baker Mayfield at the 1701. The Cleveland Browns defense to William Navon at the 1702. And then let's get into some more running backs, shall we? Kenneth Gainwell to Kyle Anand. You're looking at Deontay Foreman, another pick I like quite a bit in the 17th round here, to Michael Cullen. Xavier Legette is going to be on John Donaldson's team here as his number 6 wide receiver. We should talk about John Donaldson's team here in a little bit because I think it's interesting how he's constructing it. A lot of kickers here. Justin Tucker, Brandon Aubrey, Younghoe Koo, followed by Troy Franklin, the rookie receiver out of Oregon, now in Denver, going to Remy LeBeau. Kaimi Fairbairn, followed by Luke McCaffrey and Marvin Mims. Ferrell, 2 Broncos receivers here in the 17th round. Franklin to LeBeau, Mims to Lorzel. Which one would you have taken there had you narrowed your choices down to Franklin or Mims from the Broncos?
I might have skipped both those picks. There's receivers that I like better that you will announce in the 18th round that went there. I would say that everyone who drafted a position player or a defense in the 17th round outperformed everyone who drafted a kicker. There's some decent kickers here, but there's a lot of good kickers in this league. Kicking under fantastic and superior conditions to what some of these guys will be. It's just too early to start going kicker with the kind of talent that still exists on the board. And some of these guys, especially the ones that have bent their team heavy running back early or heavy wide receiver early, could have used another position player. That's just my opinion.
You know, you said you would have skipped both Broncos receivers in the 17th round. I'm actually with you. The one I like best in the 17th round was the receiver that went right between them, and that was John Terry taking Luke McCaffrey at the 17-11, a player who has a non-zero chance and probably, quite frankly, better than a non-zero chance of being that slot receiver for Washington this year. We were talking about Jahan Dotson, obviously Terry McLaurin there, catching passes from Jaden Daniels. The whole situation should be better. But if you're telling me I can get the slot guy on that offense in the 17th round, or even a shot at the guy who could be the slot guy in the 17th round, a rookie that has the bloodlines, and had the chops in college, I like that pick best as far as receivers in the 17th round.
I do too, and he's probably going to catch about 55 passes and run with the ball with his size and maybe do some things down in the red zone. But if he does catch 55 of his passes, I bet you 35 of them will come after week 9 or 10.
18th round, let's talk about those receivers that Ferrell liked better. Justin Fields, the third quarterback drafted by Snake Jazz, Joshua Lorzell's squad there. So he gets Fields. Trey Sermon, the presumptive backup to Jonathan Taylor. John Terry gets him after drafting Taylor in the second round. He gets Trey Sermon here in the 18th. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense to Blaine Parra. Eric Gray, a guy who's fighting for some snaps out of the Giants backfield, ends up going to Remy LeBeau here. Mike Gesicki to Bob Allen. Rashad Bateman to Al Leach, followed by Colby Parkinson, the Rams tight end that might be the starter week 1. It goes to Robert Morelli's squad here at the 1807. Harrison Butker off the board as the 6th kicker. Malachi Corley here, wide receiver 81 to Michael Cullen. And then 3 running backs finish it off. Samaje Perine, Tank Bigsby, and Justice Hill. Those are the final 3 picks of the 18th round. Ferrell, you said, in regards to the 17th round receivers, they were okay, but these 18th round receivers, you like Bateman and Corley.
Oh, well, I love Corley, and it's still to be determined if Rodgers loves him, and if Rodgers loves him, then you've got quite a fantasy player there. But I want to take the camera to Rashad Bateman, and everybody will probably groan a little bit because he missed 5 games with injury last year, and he barely caught 30 passes, and he hardly ever scored. And it's been a rough statistical run for this player. And I can understand how fantasy owners would just leave him in the dust. But I think that we're in a new age for this player. He's got to get it together. I think the player will be healthy. He's got tremendous physical athletic skills. And the balance of what's happening with the tight end, with Isaiah Likely, and how they're going to present the offense on the field. I think they're going to try to get Bateman involved. Now, what does that mean, being involved at Baltimore? It's likely 60 to 65 catches, but it could mean a lot of scores. And, they have a defense that only gave up 16 points last year, and now they got a great running back that And so there's an argument to be made that you don't need much from this player. This player is successful for them for 50 or 60 catches a year. But I still believe that Bateman deserves a chance.
Getting back to Malachi Corley, our good buddy Jimmy Williams, who's hanging out on YouTube, says, Corley not a thing this year, Mr. Elliott. He ain't ready. Now.
Yeah, Jimmy could be right. Now I got to point out to Jimmy that if he was drafted by the Bears, all of a sudden his readiness factor would have just blown through the roof. But we shall see. And Jimmy has a better chance of being correct than I do. But I'll remind everybody that we're very, very late in this draft.
Ferrell, that's my point. Like, he could be right, and you might. I mean, there is a chance, he might be. Has a better chance of being right than you. However, this is the 18th round. And what if Williams misses a bunch of time again, like he has the last several years? And what if Rodgers really does connect with Corley? We know what he did in college. The production was unbelievable. And you're telling me I can get him in the 18th round? I mean, you kind of need players that you want to be able to cut off your roster for that first wide receiver run. And if we find out in training camp that he's behind, and he's not picking it up fast enough, then perfect. You can drop him for that hot running back pickup or whoever it is in the preseason. But I think Corley is the exact type of player that you want to be drafting at this point, Ferrell.
And, we could roll back. Corley had a tremendously successful college career, albeit at Western Kentucky. That's still a big brand of football that they play down there. Now let's take a look in the 17th round, because we haven't talked about one of my favorites is Xavier Legette. And Legette at this time last year, no one really ever thought he wasn't on anyone's board, right. And he ended up being a first round pick, and he's had limited exposure and experience in college, but it doesn't matter. He has all the athletic skills, And he is the type of personality and individual that he's a pro's pro, and the people in the locker room are going to love him. And we've also talked about stacking. I think one of the most interesting concepts of stacking that is available to these early drafters is what's going on in Carolina, because you've got a new coach, you've got a little more seasoned quarterback, and you've got some very potentially from week to week explosive wide receivers in that offense, which you can start stacking in the 15th round while everyone's drafting kickers.
Yeah, then you get those receivers, those pass catchers in Carolina for sure.
John Terry and Jimmy Williams are now putting on boxing gloves.
Yeah, over Alan Lazard.
Yeah, it's I love it.
Let's what did I want to say here? Oh, okay. Let's do this. Let's go through the 20th round because the draft is now complete. It just ended about a minute or so ago. We'll just wrap things up and tell you that Joshua Lorzel ends up taking Jason Sanders. Matt Gay goes off the board to John Terry as his kicker. Zach Ertz, the Washington tight end, going to Blaine Perez, his final selection. The Chargers defense is going to be Remy LeBeau's property in this draft. A.J. Dillon and Will Shipley, a pair of running backs off the board to Allen and Leach, respectively, followed by Greg Dortch. The Packers defense going to John Donaldson. Another couple of kickers here. Tyler Bass to the Hammer. That's Michael Cullen. And then Greg Zuerlein to Kyle Anand. Tucker Kraft and Jalen Tolbert wrap things up. Tolbert, the Mr. Irrelevant of this draft, going to Alex Palazzo. The three players that I think are intriguing in the 20th round here. I'm going to exclude Tucker Kraft because I am team Musgrave. And even if Musgrave is hurt, I don't know how startable Kraft is with the ascension of a lot of the young receivers on that Packers squad. But the other three guys I think are, three guys. Will Shipley, Greg Dortch, and Jalen Tolbert. Ferrell, if I said in a vacuum you had to take one of these three players with your last pick of a Fantasy Pros Championship draft, which one would it be?
Dortch, Tolbert, and who?
Will Shipley.
Will Shipley's interesting because of his pass catching out of the backfield. So if I have Barkley, he's going to be my 20th round
selection.
Handcuff, flex, whatever you want to call him. Dortch is interesting. I wrote off Dortch very, very early because they take a look at a player and I said, man, it's hard to be productive for a lot of percentage of plays with that kind of body. It's hard to stay healthy with that kind of body, but he's proven to me that he can. Jalen Tolbert is yet to prove to me that he can find the stadium in Dallas. Zach Ertz, did Benoit get drafted here?
I do not see him. I'm going to look again.
Guys need to get aware of Benoit because his downfield pass catching skills at the tight end position in Washington will supplant Ertz. Ertz is a great football player, but he's not going to help you in fantasy ball this year. Parkinson, there's a tight end, Balky. And you know what? There's 7 tight ends reporting to camp for the Los Angeles Rams. So go figure how that's going to work.
Wow, that is a lot.
There's 7 of them on the depth chart right now. And I cannot believe it. I'm looking. And all these guys are drafting kickers very, very early. The Raiders kicker Carlson apparently has gone undrafted, which is
and the Packers kicker Carlson went undrafted.
He should, but Carlson, they run him out to kick 60-yard field goals, and that ball slices through that desert air, and it's just a beautiful thing. And then anyone who spent their spring because they're single with no kids like me and watching UFL football will understand that if you love Detroit's, you should love Batesy and go get you the Detroit Lions kicker.
The Ben Sinnott, by the way, did go in this draft. I missed him. 1303 to Kyle Anand.
Kyle knows what he's doing.
Right.
Okay. 13th round. Well, we were busy talking. We were busy listening to Alex Palazzo's dog.
Yeah, that's very true. We definitely were. I will put a wrap on the draft. Ferrell, is there any last thoughts you have in looking at this draft board here? I will tell you that I thought we talked about Palazzo's team. I thought he put together a strong squad. I like Michael Cullen's squad from the 4 spot tonight. That was a fun one. And speaking of fun ones, I think Bob Allen from the 8 I think Blaine Parra from the 10. Those are going to be fun ones to watch. And quite frankly, I'll throw in Joshua Lorzell's team from the 12 spot tonight. You know, you're drafting next to John Terry, who's won more money than God playing in the FFPC. That's a tough thing to do. And I think Lorzell had a very interesting approach, and he executed it well. He gets his elite tight end. He gets his elite quarterback, stacks the receivers early, the running backs late. So I thought that was a strong draft there, too. There's a lot of really good teams. Al Leach, too, from the 7 spot, I thought did really well tonight. And, of course, Remy LeBeau, you look at his squad from the 9, you can tell he's done a bunch of drafts. He knows where these players go. He knows how to play the board, and he did a good job tonight. A lot of strong teams. I don't know if the $1 million winner comes out of here tonight, but I think there's a lot of guys who put some pretty strong efforts up tonight.
Yeah, we're dealing with team number 12, who I think only has one starting running back, but maybe somebody will emerge from that. What team? I don't see the full board, Balky,
Right.
but what team drafted one wide receiver and then hit running back really, really hard?
Yeah, that was team 10. That was Blaine Parra. He ended up going with I'm trying to see. So the top one you're showing is Jones. So he went AJ Brown, Travis Kelce, then Jacobs, Rashad White, and Joku, and then you saw the Jones, Warren, Pollard picks there.
So how many? So we're dealing with 8 rounds. How many running backs in the first 8 rounds?
He ended up in the first 8 rounds. He had 5 running backs, 2 tight ends, and 1 wideout.
Okay, so he's in a situation there where he, if my math is correct, if he's going to play both those tight ends, he's going to have to set 3 of those running backs that he drafted. You know, whatever it is, there's too many players drafted early there that you're not going to be able to play, and
right.
that's what I don't like about that strategy. But man, I love his quarterback, and Curtis Samuel. I'd like him as a 3 receiver, not as a 2 receiver, but hell, he may put up 2 receiver numbers. It's this is the team that I want to follow and see what he does.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing with the FFPC. You only have to start 2 receivers, and you look at Dobbs and Wicks, who he grabbed, and one of those guys could emerge in Green Bay. Curtis Samuel. Not a lot of people are. It's like Khalil Shakir is life right now in Buffalo. So there's a lot of people loving on him, but they're not loving on Curtis Samuel. That's another guy. Think about Adam Thielen. I know I've been talking your ear off about this guy, but he had dominant elite weeks last year, probably like 3 or 4 of them. So in pockets, you can play Thielen if you play your cards right. And then obviously I talked about how much I like DeMarcus Robinson, maybe more so from a best ball perspective. But Roman Wilson, there's some targets there too. I know Arthur Smith is the OC there, but no Deontay Johnson anymore. Roman Wilson. That's the thing, is you kind of have to plant your flags on these guys who could emerge. And he took a lot of shots here with wide receiver after loading up on running back, which is what you have to do. And that's a good strategy to try to win $1 million.
Plant your flag, Balky, on this year's Puka. Who's this year's Puka? Where is he, Balky?
There. I'll tell you this.
In there somewhere. Billy Hollywood probably thinks it's Malachi Corley, but he sure ain't going to say it because Jimmy Williams is still hanging around.
Yeah.
Jimmy Williams is lurking around. So, it's not going to be Corley. Could it be Xavier Legette?
It could
be this year's Puka.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, if you're talking about, I don't know, like, define what the parameters would be for Nacua. Does it have to be a day 3 rookie wide receiver? Because we're not drafting any of those guys.
Yeah, it's got to be a guy that you draft in the last few rounds. It's got to be a guy that goes from the proverbial extra to the first round or second round penthouse next year.
Yeah, I think. Well, okay. So no, obviously the easy answer, and I think the correct answer is there is no Puka Nacua.
Yeah, probably so.
This year. But I don't know. You have to find a guy on a team that's going to be passing a lot, right? So you can't pick a guy like Roman Wilson. I don't think they're gonna throw enough. But you bring up Corley. We talked about Luke McCaffrey.
We like Luke.
He would need some injury assistance from McLaurin and or Dotson, but I think that's a possibility there. I guess that'd probably be my pick. I guess Legette you could throw in there as well. I don't like Polk or Baker I know Nelson Sousa was on our FFPC live draft coverage on the channel here a couple of weeks ago, and he said he's a real big fan of Javon Baker this year. I just don't know if the volume is going to be there enough for Baker. But I guess if I had to pick one, it'd probably be McCaffrey.
Yeah, and there you're dealing with a player that's got to prove, and Rubio drops in with it, and we appreciate his consistent contributions to the show. And it has to, he's got to prove that he can beat the press coverage on the NFL level.
Right.
And if he can, then he can do just everything else just perfectly. So,
right.
Maybe that is the guy.
I'll tell you who the guy is that you want to do live draft coverage with. It's the KFFSC commissioner, Ferrell Elliott. Follow him on the X at jferrellelliott and check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, KFFSC.com. Draft live in Cincinnati, draft live in Louisville, draft online at KFFSC.com. It's coming up, man. I mean, everything's filling up right now. There's still chances to get involved. We talked with Alex Palazzo tonight, who plays in Kentucky. I'm obviously loading up in Kentucky this year as well, Ferrell. It's a really fun place to play.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you, sir.
We will do this again on next Friday. We will be back to our normal non-draft coverage show, Ferrell. I will talk with you again then. Enjoy your weekend, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
That is Ferrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. And what a show it was. I want to thank Ferrell. I want to thank Alex Palazzo for dropping by. I want to thank the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you. As I said, we will be back at 10 p.m. Eastern time next Friday with our next High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. In case you missed last night's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, you can watch it on the rewatch it, or go back and watch the replay on the FFPC socials, as well as the Better Sports Network at bettersports.com as well. Fantasy Football Expo founder and Fantasy Football Consistency Award-winning scribe Bob Lung joined me from Big Guy Fantasy Sports. It was a fun 2 hours. Bob said to me afterwards, wow, that 2 hours just flew by. It was a really fun conversation. Hopefully we helped you out. Hopefully you just enjoyed the conversation, because we chopped it up quite a bit about a lot of players. So you can watch that replay. The July edition of the High Stakes Lowdown aired this past Tuesday. You can watch the replay with myself and four-time FFPC main event Fantasy Pros Dynasty League champ Greg Mistretta joined me. He's also going to be making his maiden voyage in the 2024 FFPC Pros versus Joe's Challenge. So it was a fun conversation with him. You can watch that at rotoviz.com/podcast or rewatch it on any of the FFPC socials. The 2024 Fantasy Pros Championship has drafts filling daily. Check it out at myffpc.com. I'll give you an update on the midnight draft, which is slated to start in about 20 minutes. I wonder if John Terry is going to join that one. Non-zero chance of that happening. We have 9 spots still left in that. So I think that one's will still fill. It might be a slight delay on that. So go ahead and get yourself a cold beverage, settle up and ride for that midnight draft tonight. $1 million grand prize is at stake. $6 million grand prize, $6 million prize pool, myffpc.com. The 2024 FFPC Best Ball and FFPC Superflex Best Ball tournaments are live as well. Slow and live drafts filling every day there. 125 gets you in the running for a $300,000 grand prize in the FFPC Best Ball tournament. In the Superflex version, just $35 to enter, and you can still win a $100,000 grand prize. Make sure you're signing up for the FFPC main event. Slow and live drafts going on there right now. myffpc.com is where to go. Another $1 million grand prize there. Check out the Empire Dynasty League startups we have and the Dynasty startups, the classic Dynasty startups that are popping off almost daily right now at myffpc.com. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate you hanging out on this Friday night or streaming it later. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Ferrell just pointed out that nobody could hear me because I had my mic muted for some reason. I want to remind everybody that while we will not be live, this show will not be live until next Friday. We will have live draft coverage on Tuesday night. Aiden LaCory, Dave Terpoli will be on the call, as well as maybe a special guest. We've had a lot of special guests coming on. Bradley Stalder and Nelson Sousa have come on. So that is this coming Tuesday. We'll be live on this YouTube channel. And then next Friday, we'll be back live on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. 9 days from today, the Pros versus Joes Challenge kicks off. I think Dave Terpoli will be on the call for all 6 with me, and I believe Ferrell Elliott will be on a bunch of those as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Don't miss it. This is a great time to be subscribing to this channel because we got a lot of great content coming for you, and hopefully enjoy it. Have a great weekend, everybody. Be good. Talk